We're here at Hannah Barry Gallery to talk to Marie Jacotey about her new show, Dolly. Can you just start by explaining where your first inspiration for this show came from?
Yes, I'm maybe like it's not a first inspiration, but I made a series of work beforehand that was called the Crucifixion series, which were research on plaster. And that was like the first series I made on plaster about the same scale, not exactly the same format. It was like various different kind of format, but all very small. And I was really interested in the materiality of the thing, so I decided to push it further and to start like this one series. And the inspiration for the theme of it is, I don't think there is one thing. It's usually in my work, I tend to work from like one sentence that I find is inspiring. And for instance, the sentence that led me on doing this work was "getting over you." So I found myself obsessed with that, and I decided to produce this series of small pictures, a bit like ex votos or prayers, and something to get rid of an obsessive idea, and this idea was getting over you.
And you said you worked with plaster before on that other series. Do you like working with plaster? Like, does it have a particular materiality or sort of texture that appeals to you?
Yeah, it has. The surface of plaster is absolutely amazing to work on because color is, the pigments of the colored pencils I was using is really bright and really intense on plaster. And in the previous series I had used colored pencils, but as well painting, and even if I didn't use painting in those ones, the use of painting on plaster is absolutely phenomenal. It's great in terms of colors, and the materiality of painting changes a lot when you apply it onto this.
And what about the small scale? Because the works are almost postcard size. Is that something that you have done in the past, or is that something that you're now working on?
The scale of my work changes quite a lot according to what I'm trying to express, but I think the series needed to be really intimate. That's why it's quite small, and as I said, it really refers to some like small icons I saw in churches, for instance, with people, drawing like those little plates and coming to ask for something, like for the curing of their son or something like that. And it's always quite small, actually. So that's, I guess it refers to this, and it's also because I want it to be, intimate.
And I'm really curious about the character who we see. Is it the same character, or is it just one person who's everyone in a way? I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's a good way of putting it. I don't think it's one person in particular, but I think it is still, one character that is all the characters. And you can see, like the features of the girls I'm depicting are changing slightly, but they are still the same sort of girl, I guess, quite young, quite pretty. I find them pretty, but...
And do you feel that it sort of reflects onto you? Is it autobiographical, or...?
It is not autobiographical, but I think it reflects onto me in the sense that I'm depicting something that I know somehow, not because I have experienced it, but just because I'm the age I am and of the generation I am, but not me precisely.
And the title of the show is Dolly. Is that her name?
No, it's not her name, but I think it could be one of her names, and I think it's just describing her quite well, in the sense that, when you're getting over someone, I guess, you're a bit outside of yourself, and I like this idea of Dolly, which makes her as an object almost.
So I wanted to talk about the relationship with the text and the titles to the works. And this work here is called God Knows How You Love Those Fights. They Left Me Hitting the Ground, which is quite sort of personal and intimate in a way, like a memory or a thought. Where did the title come from?
Well, so basically most of the text of the show I write myself, except on like few occasions like there are texts from an author, but this one is particularly violent, I find, and I like it in relationship with this image, which is actually quiet and empty, and well, there is no figure in this one. And I think there is a lot of underlying violence in few of the pieces around, and I think it's really important for me, like, to have this kind of violence coming because all the images are quite still otherwise, and there is something about like, some sort of silence, maybe. I don't know if you would agree, because of course there is like a whole list of titles. So if you look at them like that, I think there is something quite silent, quite, still, as I said. So this violence almost like brings some sort of energy or dynamism in the image. I'm not sure if I'm clear when I say that, but...
Yeah. And this is one of the works that doesn't have a figure in it. Was that conscious? Do you always start with a figure, or do you start with a snapshot or a scene?
It's really difficult to say, because it really depends on the images. I guess especially with this series of work, I mean, it is true like for the rest of my work as well, because I usually work in series, but especially for this series of work, I usually, like, one image leads to the other one, and whether it being because I like one character that I'm going to try and draw like in a different posture, or because I like one of the patterns of one image that I'm going to try and draw in a different setting. So for this image, for instance, I was really interested like in the pattern of the carpet, and I thought it would be really interesting to give it like some sort of bigger place, and then it didn't need any body in the image. So that's how it came about.
I think this one also, once you've walked around, this one feels like you're sort of in the body of the person looking out, rather than looking in as a voyeur. And you said that sort of one image comes from another while you're creating, and is there a sense of narrative, or is there a narrative order of the works in the gallery?
I don't think there is a sense of narrative, although, well, it is some sort maybe of experimental narrative. I'm really interested in cinema, for instance, and there is a sense of sequence, for sure, which of course then maybe implies some sort of narrative, but it's not a defined narrative, and for instance, we didn't keep the order in which those were made to exhibit them. And I think it works much better this way, actually, because the sense of sequence helped me making the work, but doesn't necessarily help me present it, or,
And were you working in London?
Yes, I work in Bow, actually. My studio space is in Bow, East London.
Because I definitely noticed there's a few swimming pools, and it does have a quite bright Californian kind of sense to it. And I mean, while you're in Bow, were you thinking of being elsewhere?
Well, it is, probably actually. No, to be fair, I think I really had this sense of holidays coming and influencing the work, and I'm probably influenced by just like the changing of seasons. And I was about to go on a trip to Greece for a month, and I'm originally from there, so I'm guessing there is some sort of a Mediterranean reminiscence in this work. And the colors were really bright, but it was a really, really sunny day, so I'm guessing, yes, probably just really pragmatically I was influenced by the weather outside.
And also with the swimming pool, I don't know why, but it sort of, reminded me of that very well-known David Hockney picture. I mean, I guess it's the same colours. I don't want to compare you to him, but...
No, well, that's my pleasure.
But is there any artists that you feel that you were inspired by, or that you admire, that maybe you were thinking about, or just generally with the rest of your work?
Funnily enough, I think I'm influenced by artists just generally in my practice, but maybe not specifically for one piece of work. Well, David Hockney, of course, I'm a huge fan. I mean, I'm saying of course, but no, I am just really admirative of his work. I'm looking a lot at drawers, actually. There is this one drawer, and he's not really famous overseas, but he's called Blutch, and he's mainly a comics drawer in France, but he made this book just of drawings, not a comics book, and it's absolutely fantastic. And I'm, of course, influenced by painters like Philippe Guston, for instance, or, I don't know, even like the work of Louise Bourgeois, or, yeah, of Thaler, like of another generation, or a French painter, Marc Desgrandchamps. Yeah.
Do you do a lot of sketching and drawing before making the works, or?
No, that's the thing. I draw quite spontaneously. So for those pictures, for instance, I like just getting on the image, and I usually have quite a rough idea of what I want to draw, but sometimes not even. And I just let the image lead me somehow. I do sketch a lot other than this. I mean, I do draw a lot on paper, and I'm really interested in edition and comics in general. And of course, yeah, the format of those pictures can make things, because it could be like, yeah, just like a book format almost. But yeah, no, I do them quite directly, I think.